What happens if you break something expensive at Disneyland? Believe it or not, they usually don't make you pay, even if it's expensive. Cast members can't just go, "That'll be $5,000 for the animatronic you broke." Most of the time, it just gets quietly written off. Next, if you break an item that you bought inside the park, fortunately, they might even replace it. Disney is weirdly generous with stuff like broken souvenirs, no matter how expensive it is. Though I don't think the same can be said about this $280,000 full diamond-encrusted castle. But if you break something from a ride, this is where things can get serious fast. Because what broke can shut the ride down, and Disney starts losing money every minute it's not running. If it looks accidental, you might still be forgiven. But if it looks intentional, that forgiveness disappears faster than a fast pass in 2015. These are every hidden room inside Disneyland. First, we have Club 33, Disney's ultra-secret VIP restaurant where wealthy guests hide from the crowds. It's behind a fancy door and membership costs as much as a car. A nice car. Exactly 12 steps down is 21 Royal, a private dining experience for 12 people with royal fantasies, and a $15,000 budget. Next, the Fire Station apartment on Main Street is where Walt Disney used to live. And with the Walk in Walt's Footsteps tour, Disney lets us normal humans walk inside without sacrificing a kidney. After that comes Cinderella's castle, which hides a royal suite almost no one can book. It's filled with glittering details and gives the impression Disney wants guests to dream big, just not sleep there. And lastly, we have Backstage. It's the forbidden land where Mickey takes off his head and Cinderella eats Cheetos. They say it's a restricted place, yet somehow we have footage revealing everything. This man went to Disneyland every single day for almost a decade. In 2012, Jeff Wrights decided to do a fun challenge to visit Disneyland for an entire year. Unemployed at the time and gifted with an annual pass, Jeff treated the park almost like his second home. The only problem is, he kind of forgot about the one-year challenge and kept going for 8 years straight, totaling 2,995 straight days of churros, fireworks, and probably hearing "It's a Small World" more than any human should. But just 5 days before hitting the perfect 3,000-day milestone, the pandemic hit, so the park shut down, ending his streak. Every mistake first-time Disneyland guests make. Firstly, avoid booking your visit on what's called a blackout day. These are specific dates when reservations and day passes aren't allowed for admission. You don't want to arrive at the gates only to discover the only ride you're allowed on is the drive back home. Next, you should know that the mobile order feature exists specifically to save you from hour-long food lines. Ignoring it means recreating the waiting in line experience even when you don't have to. Also, make sure to choose your fireworks and parade viewing area wisely. Not all spots are created equal. Some locations will give you a magical show, while others offer the unique experience of staring at the back of a tree. Lastly, Disneyland requires a lot of walking, which first-timers sometimes forget, so if you tried wearing flip-flops or, God forbid, a 12-centimeter high heels taller than Matterhorn, prepare to finish the day walking like a retired pirate. 3 Disneyland secrets even some cast members don't know about. First, you've probably heard of 101 being ride down and 102 meaning the ride running, but that's just the kiddie pool. There are hidden subcodes like 101G, which means a guest caused the shutdown, and capacity codes like 104 or 105 that quietly track how packed the ride is. Next, those lost dads wandering around the Emporium might actually be plainclothes Disney security. And here's the twist, you won't know who they are, and neither will most cast members. They blend in perfectly, casually tailing shoplifters or suspicious guests while pretending to browse plush toys. Lastly, ever wonder how many people is currently in the park? So does everyone who works there. The true number is locked away tighter than Walt's frozen head. Disney princesses can never break these rules. Firstly, Disney decides which princess you are, not you. You might look like perfect Elsa material, but if they already have enough Elsas, congratulations, you're now Edna. Next, before wearing a ball gown, most princess performers spend weeks sweating inside Mickey's pants. It's the Disney rite of passage of being a fur character before a face. Also, princesses cannot sing during meet and greets, even if the character is famous for singing. So they might talk about songs all day, but she won't actually sing unless she's in a park with a different contract. More surprisingly, Disney princesses are actually the ones doing their makeup themselves, but only using one exact corporate-approved method, so no smoky eyes and most certainly no experiments. Lastly, face characters have strict time limits for safety reasons, usually around 45 minutes outdoors. When the set ends, they have to leave, even if the line behind them looks like a Black Friday sale. Every possible way Disneyland might kick you out. Firstly, believe it or not, some guests get escorted out for acting too excited to see Mickey. Being over-enthusiastic at 9 a.m. makes security think you might try hugging a parade float later on. And surprisingly, a cast member might even flag you out, simply because you resemble someone who was previously banned, even if your only crime is sharing the same haircut. Now, while guests can bring snacks, some people get stopped when they bring coolers big enough to survive a week in the wilderness. Even Mickey wonders if you're planning to move in. Then there are guests who misuse the disability access service, pretending they need it for VIP treatment. But Disney's cracking down so hard on this one, you'll be heading home before you can even fake a limp. And of course, offensive or overly revealing clothing is a guaranteed no-go. Even if the front gate misses it, roaming security definitely won't. Only Disneyland princesses know about this. First, most jobs require some training, but being a Disney princess means studying your character like a medieval historian. Every performer has to perfectly embody their princess's movie knowledge, voice, and mannerisms at all times. So when you ask Ariel what she thinks of sushi, she'll smile sweetly and change the subject like the professional she is. Next, even royal schedules have slow days. If a performer's character isn't needed, they can be reassigned to work as a character attendant instead. That means one day you're Belle at the castle, the next you're traffic control for Donald Duck. Lastly, each princess usually has 2 full costume sets a day, one for morning, one for evening, so they always look freshly animated. But the costume is the easy part. The real time sink is the hair and makeup. Between wigs, curls, and contouring, getting royal ready can take 45 minutes or more. Disneyland facts that sound fake but are 100% real. Firstly, Disney once sold cigarettes, cigars, and even fancy Mickey logo pipes right on Main Street, which feels like the opposite of family-friendly. It ran for decades, proving there truly was a time when you could buy a Mickey-shaped ice cream bar and a pack of smokes in the same park. Next, workers at Casa de Fritos started frying stale tortillas instead of tossing them, basically inventing Doritos by accident. Frito-Lay loved it, turned it into a national snack, and somehow didn't make them mouse-shaped. Over at It's a Small World, the doll's yarn hair stretches due to the water, making it look like its hair is growing, which is adorable and slightly creepy at the same time. Disney solves this by giving them regular haircuts. And lastly, women weren't allowed to be Jungle Cruise skippers until the 1990s, and Disney doesn't exactly list it as one of their proudest traditions. 3 things Disneyland cast members will instantly get fired for. First, Disney's sick policy is no joke. When a cast member calls out sick, the mouse wants you to actually be sick, not sick of working. So if you're spotted strolling around the park, even as a paying guest on a sick day, you can kiss that name tag goodbye. Next, Disney's backstage areas are where the real work happens, so taking photos there is like breaking a royal law. The company's entire reputation depends on maintaining the illusion, and that illusion means Mickey is not just some guy in a suit. Lastly, even something as small as embroidery follows strict guidelines. Cast members can't personalize items with nicknames or alternate spellings. The stitched name must match their ID exactly. Everything Disneyland tries to hide from you. First, Disneyland trash cans aren't just 30 meters apart. They're connected to an underground system that vacuums garbage away. Guests never notice this, mostly because no one's sticking their head in a trash can. Next, to control the crowds, cast members would often manually change the posted wait times on popular rides to discourage people from queuing any further. Also, a great number of what you'd think are regular guests might actually be Disney's undercover security. They're buff dads in cargo shorts, often holding a shopping bag. Now, believe it or not, almost every corner of Disneyland has a camera, even places you'd swear are impossible to monitor. It's mainly for safety purposes, but also, yes, they definitely saw what you did there. Lastly, after the park closes, over 200 feral cats roam Disneyland to keep rodents away. They don't wear name tags or costumes, and they work for free and report to absolutely no one. Everything you need to know about going to Disneyland in Christmas. Firstly, Disneyland is always busy, but Christmas crowds are on another level. Families of families, all in matching pajamas. And if you want to ride anything before sunset, Lightning Lane is now a must. Next, don't leave the park just to rest at your hotel during the holidays. The park's capacity can max out fast, and you may find that going back in is now a Christmas miracle you did not receive. Now, in case you didn't know, the worst crowd isn't actually December. It's the chaotic week in between Christmas and New Year's. But if you want to avoid the Christmas chaos, the holiday time guided tour is basically a secret VIP pass wrapped in Christmas bows. It gives you reserved parade viewing, snacks, and a holiday ride, all bundled up so you don't have to fight for a curb spot. Things you'll only see in Disneyland during Christmas. Firstly, Main Street becomes the most festive block in America. Disney puts up 70,000 lights and a 60-foot Christmas tree. Rides like It's a Small World and the Haunted Mansion get a holiday glow-up as well. Christmas is the only time Disneyland gets snowfall, usually from Disney's carefully controlled foam machines on Main Street, but every now and then, Santa personally rewards Southern California winter that day. There's also the Believe in Holiday Magic fireworks show that you can't miss. It only runs during the Christmas season and then completely disappears for the rest of the year. More importantly, you'll get to see Santa Claus in the park, and not just Mickey in a Santa hat, the real guy. And if you stay in a Disney hotel, he shows up there too. And lastly, Merry Christmas. May your churros stay warm and your wait time stay short. People actually tried to steal these from Disneyland. Firstly are the ride props. Guests kept stealing Snow White's poison apple so often it was allegedly replaced with a projection. Even weirder, people tried to steal bones from Pirates of the Caribbean, including ones that were once real human remains. Next, there are many 3D rides in the park that make use of special glasses. And I think you know where I'm going with this? Yes. Security once pulled multiple pairs of 3D bug-eye glasses out of a single bag. But crazier than that, one guest allegedly carried an entire chair out of the resort and loaded it into their SUV without even trying to hide it. And speaking of things inside the park, some people have also been known to chip off pieces of bricks and rocks from Main Street and around the park as souvenirs. Even in the super exclusive $30,000 a year Club 33 isn't safe. Some visitors have tried to slip fancy decor and candlesticks into their bags as if Disney wouldn't notice a missing chandelier. Only Disney princesses can get away with this. Firstly, princesses can get away with odd behavior as long as it fits their character. If Snow White borrows a churro from a kid because she's terribly hungry from escaping the evil queen, management just smiles and nods like that's totally normal. When regular cast members don't know the answer to a question, they go find someone who does. But if a princess doesn't know, she can just make something up. So instead of restrooms are to the left, you get follow the path where Rapunzel once saw the floating lights. Lastly, while most cast members have to stay firmly on the ground doing their job, princesses can sometimes hop into a ride with guests because it would count as a magical moment. Every secret Disney cast members won't tell you. Firstly, asking for a magical moment is ironically the fastest way to not get one. Cast members need manager approval and prefer surprising guests naturally, not rewarding someone who arrives with cupcake expectations. Also, cast members aren't hiding secret info about ride downtime that you don't know about. They don't get live alerts, so when Tron breaks, they're basically going to check the exact same app you're refreshing every 5 seconds. Now, believe it or not, being inside those giant character suits feels like summer in Florida and a sauna got married. This is because Disney bans AC fans inside those suits, so you basically get to play Donald Duck and rotisserie chicken. Also, Disney costumes like Cinderella's gown aren't the cheap versions you see at Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. Fur suits like Mickey's cost around $15,000, so if you bump and damage one, that's a problem no magical moment can save you from. These are the wildest things guests tried to do inside Disneyland. Firstly, a male guest was once upset about someone line cutting in the Haunted Mansion queue, so he pepper sprayed him. Not knowing how air works, he also seasoned everyone else nearby. Next, a guest once jumped out of a moving Splash Mountain log during a panic attack. He realized the big drop was coming, so he got cold feet and walked out. Similarly, another guest exited It's a Small World, but instead of leaving, he removed his clothes and stood next to the dolls like he was part of the attraction. And speaking of It's a Small World, Whoopi Goldberg once admitted she scattered her mother's ashes on the ride. She later told people not to do it, which feels unfair because she already got hers in. Lastly, a guest once dropped his hat on the monorail track, but when he tried to get it back, he accidentally grabbed a live 600-volt wire instead. He walked away with a second-degree burn and a very permanent lesson in physics. Disney cast members always have to do this while on duty. Firstly, cast members have to treat every public area like a performance. The moment a guest can see you, you're in character. Basically, your job is to make standing still look magical. Speaking of standing, Disney expects cast members to look alert and active at all times. Therefore, sitting on a chair, leaning on a wall, or any type of resting is considered unprofessional or bad show. Also, before stepping into guest areas or into the stage, CMs have to make sure their uniform, hair, and overall look are perfect. Lastly, cast members and mostly costumed characters must avoid going to the guest bathrooms entirely, which means you'll never exactly see Mickey Mouse in the next stall creating his own Splash Mountain. 3 things adults can do that kids never can at Disneyland. Firstly, adults have the spending power. Well, maybe not all of them, but if an adult and a kid lock eyes on the same Lightning McQueen toy, only one of them can actually swipe a card and walk out smiling. The other one learns an important life lesson about capitalism and emotions. Next, you have to be 18 or older to book a Disneyland ticket. Technically, a toddler can have $2,000 and still need someone taller to hit checkout. So in the end, kids can't just roll up and plan their own magical day. Lastly, some rides have height requirements, which means kids might spend years dreaming about Space Mountain before they're legally tall enough to get flung around in the dark. Disney cast members are secretly trained to do this. Firstly, service cast members can only sell 2 alcoholic drinks per person, and they are trained to be able to check for signs of intoxication or if someone is already tipsy or has been drinking before making them a drink. Next, pin trading is a staple Disneyland tradition, and CMs are required to trade pins fairly. They can't refuse a trade based on rarity or personal preference, even if that means handing over an ultra-rare pin in exchange for something a guest clearly bought for $2 off eBay. Lastly, Disney teaches every single one of its employees, from high-up executives to Mickey's best friends, to pick up trash using a smooth swoop and scoop motion. The strangest items guests have tried to bring inside Disneyland. Firstly, a guest once tried to bring a frying pan into the park, but she was not going to cook there. She was actually trying to get it autographed by Flynn Rider. But more absurd than that, someone showed up at the gate with a telescoping metal back scratcher. Unlike the frying pan, this one got confiscated because an extendable metal stick is actually not allowed inside the park. There's also someone who got their Band-Aids confiscated at a bag check. To be fair, Band-Aids aren't strange, but having them taken away is, which suggests there were way too many or something else going on. Speaking of way too many, another guest was pulled aside after the metal scanner lit up like a Christmas tree. Turns out they were carrying a massive clump of cheap trading pins. Apparently, he was going to trade them up inside. And lastly, security once stopped someone from bringing in actual bowling balls inside the park, which raises the obvious question, what's he going to do with it? Disney cast members don't want you finding out about this. Firstly, cast members don't judge appearances. When they're suspicious of you, they're trained to watch how you pace, loop around an area, or check exits. It's less, that guy looks shady, and more, why has this guy walked past the same churro cart 6 times? Next, free snacks, ride recoveries, or surprise fast passes aren't always pure kindness. They're sometimes a polite way to calm someone before they turn into a problem. It's cheaper to hand you a churro than call security. Lastly, cast members only write down bad guest behavior, not good ones. So helping a lost kid doesn't earn you Mickey Miles or whatever you thought, but yelling at Goofy, that goes in the permanent record. Stupid things guests tried to do in Disneyland. Firstly, some guests try faking a disability to skip lines. When Disney noticed this, they responded by tightening the system, which unfortunately made access more complicated for guests with real disabilities. Speaking of faking, there are also guests who stage fake proposals hoping Disney will shower them with free stuff. Most of the time, the only thing they got was nothing. Next, TikTok influencers once convinced people that loosening the seatbelt on Guardians Mission Breakout and Tower of Terror would give extra airtime during the drops. This led Disney to post warnings and eject guests who do so. Lastly, and probably least offensive of all, guests have tried tailing Club 33 members upstairs or slipping in like they belong. Unfortunately, the staff sees this 10 times a week, and they always get redirected back to the regular world. 3 crazy Disney cast member secrets you were never meant to know. At one point, character attendants were allegedly told not to trill their tongues to grab toddlers' attention because someone claimed it sounded like an offensive battle cry. Even cast members reportedly thought it was absurd, but for a brief moment, it was treated like a very serious concern. Next, everyone knows cast members are trained to point with 2 fingers, or an open hand instead of 1 finger. But what you don't see is that some cast members quietly laugh when Disney superfans try copying the Disney point for absolutely no reason. Lastly, there's an official backstage tour called Keys to the Kingdom, which cast members jokingly nickname Murder the Magic. That's because you'll see characters half-dressed, carrying giant heads and wigs, proof that Mickey is just in fact a guy in a suit. Here's why you'll probably regret working at Disneyland. First, working at Disneyland means you're not clocking into a job, you're clocking into a performance. Even if your role is something ordinary like a cashier or custodial worker, you're still part of the act. The hardest part isn't the work itself, it's pretending you're full of sunshine when you'd rather just melt into the nearest churro cart. Next, Disney's pay rates look decent on paper, but Anaheim's cost of living quickly eats the magic away. Many cast members end up sharing tiny apartments or commuting long distances just to make ends meet. Lastly, everyone dreams of seeing behind the curtain until they actually do. Backstage at Disneyland is where the fantasy ends. Seeing the cracks in the happiest place on Earth might change how you experience it forever. Every Disneyland job you didn't know existed. Firstly, you don't see them, but behind every parade float, there are parade float drivers. They follow a super tight path, in slow motion like an obstacle course, because one wrong turn and suddenly Mickey is off-roading through the crowd. Next, if you're not always rushing to Space Mountain, you'll notice the silhouette artists on Main Street. They cut a perfect side profile of your face with scissors in just a few minutes. And these are actually very good souvenirs to take home. If you're not rich, you've probably never met the cast members known as the Plaids. These VIP tour guides run high-end tours and somehow know every shortcut, every snack location, and the extremely specific history behind why a bathroom stall has a stain. And finally, the most unexpected role, Disneyland's security K9 handlers. Do remember, these are real trained security officers working with highly trained dogs, not John from Ohio holding a Pluto costume on a leash. Every secret Disney princesses won't tell you. Disney princesses don't just get hired and live happily ever after. They have to re-audition every year. Management checks if they still have the right look, walk, and hair. Speaking of hair, princesses have to wear a wig no matter what. Even if the performer has Rapunzel-level real hair, they still wear a wig to make sure it looks identical every day. There are also actually different tiers of being a princess. A parade Jasmine and meet and greet Jasmine are the same character but treated like totally different jobs with different expectations. Being a princess is also a fast-paced role. Some performers only have 2 days to learn an entire princess role. One day for studying movement and voice, the next day for meeting trial guests. And princesses also study way more than just their respective movies. They research extended lore, side stories, books, old interviews, and anything a superfan kid might bring up. Here's how to skip the lines in Disneyland for free. Firstly, if a ride breaks down at the worst possible time, cast members may give you a multiple experience pass for other attractions. It's Disney apologizing without actually saying sorry. Next, single rider lines allow you to skip the long wait by filling empty seats that groups can't use. You'll get on faster, but you'll also be momentarily adopted by a random family who pretends you're not there. Also, in case you didn't know, Disney will still let you on a ride even if you enter the queue just 1 minute before the attraction officially closes. This usually means there's barely anyone left in line, so you walk in like you're a VIP. And speaking of VIPs, if you have a wealthy friend, you can trick or gaslight them into booking the private Disney VIP tour. It includes a plaid-clad guide that can walk you onto almost any ride without waiting. Craziest things cast members have seen guests do inside Disneyland. Firstly, a guy once stood up mid-ride on Autopia, got told to sit down, and argued, "You can't get hurt here, it's Disneyland," as if Walt notarized a safety waiver for his spine. Next, a guest cat called Minnie Mouse near the character costuming area, and Mickey Mouse snapped back in full Mickey voice. The threat sounded cheerful and mildly threatening. Now, some guests tried pin trading while a CM handled a code V, basically wanting to swap pins while the CM cleaned refunded turkey leg from the ground. Speaking of code V, a kid caused a marinara-level disaster near Big Thunder, and a man just so happened to slip and land in the danger zone, he instantly became a human breadstick. Lastly, a dad lowered his kid like a claw machine to grab the money inside Snow White's wishing well. Security arrived just as the kid came back up victorious, holding a wad of very unmagical cash. Here's what no one tells you about going to Disneyland alone. Firstly, it feels weird. At first, Disneyland is built for families and couples, so showing up you'll feel like the one puzzle piece that didn't come in the box. Luckily, a few rides in, that weirdness fades and you start realizing no one actually cares. Next, without someone to chat with, you naturally slow down and notice things most people speed right past. You'll catch tiny details in the buildings, animatronics, and background music you never paid attention to before. Most importantly, as a solo guest, you instantly become the unofficial photographer for every family within a 5-foot radius. People will hand you their phones like it's your new part-time job. And the best part, you only pay for your ticket, your food, and your bad decisions. Not 5 churros for 5 different people. Disneyland still isn't cheap, but your wallet gets to breathe for once. Every time cast members had to break character. Firstly, when a cast member sees someone in serious trouble, like a guest choking on a turkey leg, the fairy tale ends instantly and first aid takes over. There will be no Disney smile during the Heimlich, just a calm and very focused effort to make sure no one loses a battle to poultry today. Next, when a character gets physically hurt mid-set, they might not keep being in character specifically when pain kicks in. Especially when your groin takes a hit, commitment to the bit becomes optional. Lastly, backstage is where characters stop being characters and start being employees again. If a guest manages to sneak inside, they will not be suddenly playing character and greet the trespasser with a smile. Every type of outfit that'll get you kicked out in Disneyland. Firstly, Disneyland bans full-character cosplay for adults because you might look too convincing. This might end up with guests mistaking you for the real deal. And Disney does not enjoy explaining why Cinderella just bought a churro with a credit card. Next, even if you're not dressing up as a Disney character, outfits with 3D props like foam swords, hard shields, or weapons get flagged at the gate. They may feel like a toy to you, but from guests 15 feet away, they don't. Now, believe it or not, wearing an all-white robe with a hood also raises concerns. This is because they resemble certain uniformed groups that absolutely do not belong in the happiest place on Earth, like the Jedis. Lastly, if you like wearing vibrant colored outfits, avoid wearing polos and pants that look exactly like the cast member uniforms. Guests might start asking you for directions and you will fail spectacularly. Every secret Disney cast members won't tell you. Firstly, you can tip some cast members, but only after the rule of 3 refusals. They're trained to politely refuse tips, but if you keep insisting after multiple refusals, they can accept, because at that point, you've clearly chosen this hill. Next, if you hear protein spill, that's not a snack. It's cast member code for someone got sick and we need cleanup immediately. The term is intentionally vague because honesty would ruin lunch for everyone nearby. Speaking of throwing up, if someone protein spilled on you, guest relations may replace your clothes. This happens more than you'd expect, which is alarming for reasons beyond the free shirt. And lastly, Disneyland's Lost and Found is way more intense than you think. Around 70% of lost items are returned the same day, and they'll even mail things to you if you've already left. Disney princesses are shocked when guests do this. Firstly, there are people who will literally stop in the middle of a moving parade to take selfies with the performing characters. Then, there were also times where guests would bring random props expecting characters to perform with them, like asking Merida for an archery lesson using a plastic sword from Dollar Tree. Sadly, Disney didn't include advanced archery in the princess training manual. Also, even if princesses study their characters' trivia and entire lore extensively, there are some guests who try to test the characters with almost impossible questions. An aerial performer was once asked to name every fish in the Mediterranean. And finally, kids love giving princesses gifts, which is code for whatever was melting in their pocket. One performer got a half-melted string cheese, a warm Pop-Tart, and a single pocket grape. What happens when a cast member quits Disneyland? Firstly, once you officially leave and your separation is processed, your ID can stop working almost immediately. So don't expect to sneak in one last churro run unless you're planning to pay like a regular guest. But also, before you're fully cleared, you'll have to return everything the company issued you, from keys to devices to whatever you forgot was in your locker. Luckily, they let you keep the name tag, so your fridge still knows you're magical. Now, if something on your costume record doesn't come back, like a piece of character costume, it can be flagged as an outstanding balance, so you either have to find it or pay for it. And if you ever visit the park again, your Disney reflexes will still be there. Former CMs joke they still instinctively point directions with 2 fingers and scan crowds for guest flow problems. What if Walt Disney visited his park in 2025? The first thing he'd notice wouldn't be the castle, it would be the ticket. After adjusting for inflation, he'd realize what once paid for admission now covers only 1 churro. And this is about to get worse. Inside the park, merch prices, food costs, and add-ons like Lightning Lane would make him wonder if the park had been taken hostage while he was gone. But hey, at least Mickey is still here. You can still meet him. if you wait 55 minutes in line. So off he goes to Tomorrowland, where he'll quickly notice that the future still looks like yesterday. But the biggest change he'll see is not with the park, but the guests. After paying $100 to get in, many will be staring at their phones. And during spectaculars, everyone's busy recording with their phones up instead of actually being in the moment. And for Walt, that might be the saddest part of all. Wildest things guests actually tried to bring into Disneyland. Firstly, one guest tried to bring an inflatable mattress inside the park. He was planning to blow it up and nap in line. Unfortunately, Disneyland does not allow you to bring your own bed. Next, some visitors walk straight from work and forget they still have giant tools or knives on them, which is probably not the build-your-own magic Disney intended. But worse than that, there was a case of a guest who accidentally brought a gun into a Disney hotel before entering the park. Let's just say Disney security shut that plotline down immediately. Now here's something that's probably a more risk to Mickey. One guest apparently brought in about 30 churros in a bag, enough to open a competing snack stand and undercut Mickey. Every Disneyland food you'll regret skipping. Firstly is the iconic Dole Whip. This is the kind of treat that tastes like pure happiness, and it makes you wonder why pineapple flavor doesn't taste this good anywhere else. This soft-serve dessert is cold, sweet, and very refreshing after waiting 40+ minutes in line for it. Next is the churro. Yes, it's just a churro, but at Disneyland, it hits differently, and no one knows why. It's a warm, crispy, overpriced life decision, and you'll smell it before you even see the cart. Then we have the turkey leg. This thing is massive, salty, and slightly ridiculous to eat in public. You'll look like a caveman eating it, but you'll also feel full, which is rare at Disneyland. There's also something called the gray stuff. It's light, creamy, and way better than something called gray has any right to be. So yes, make sure you taste it. Everything you can get in Disneyland for free. Firstly, if another guest redecorates your outfit with their lunch, aka protein spill, guest services may give you a free replacement shirt as part of their guest recovery policy. Speaking of food, if a seagull steals your food, or you drop it in a tragic slow-motion moment that is out of your control, cast members will often replace your meal for free. In the Indiana Jones ride, you can ask for a decoder card that lets you translate the temple glyphs, or at least pretend you're solving ancient mysteries while standing in line for 45 minutes. After Jungle Cruise, you can ask for a printed map that shows your route and landmarks. It's proof you survived a trip led by a skipper who tells more puns than animals. Then on Autopia, cast members can give you a free paper driver's license if you ask. It's not the DMV, but the queue is long enough to be the same. Every secret Disney villains aren't allowed to tell you. Firstly, they're coached on exactly how far insults can go. Villains are taught exactly which jokes are allowed and which topics are off limits, with a mental red list including weight, money, and anything your therapist would warn you about. And in case you don't know, villains are actually trained to scan the crowd from 20 feet away and estimate kid fear levels. This is so they can adjust how menacing to act when nearing them. Villain performers also cannot hug guests back. If someone runs in for a big emotional hug, villains aren't allowed to reciprocate the gesture. Even if it's Taylor Swift and they are a big fan, they must respond with the emotional warmth of a traffic cone. And more importantly, villains are strictly required to stay standing when on stage. So unless your 3-year-old grows 2 feet in 5 seconds, it's going to be a very vertical photo. Every way to enter Disneyland for free. Firstly, try scouring your parents' or grandparents' basement for any legacy ticket. A guy once found an unused Disneyland ticket from 1985. He handed it to Disney, and they actually honored it. You can also join a Disney sweepstakes. They not only give away park admission, but also bigger magical experiences, like winning a night inside Sleeping Beauty's castle, if you've saved your country in your past life. Speaking of saving your country, Disneyland has given free tickets to California firefighters, police, EMTs, and mutual aid responders as a thank you for their service. But if you don't feel like doing anything heroic, or anything at all, sometimes someone's friend might bail at the last minute, and they might hand that extra ticket to a complete stranger, and your name just might be Complete Stranger. Disney cast members are shocked when guests do this. Firstly, many guests ignore the posted safety signs and instructions, even though they are usually written in big letters and with pictures. The crazy part is, most of these guests can, in fact, read, but chose not to. Every week, someone tries to outsmart security by trying to sneak alcohol, tobacco, or contraband into parks. Little did they know security has seen it all. Vodka inside clear Gatorade, vitamins and deodorant sticks, and a shampoo bottle that wasn't shampoo anymore. Lastly, some guests plant themselves in the middle of the street during a parade like they've just claimed the land for their ancestors. This usually ends with cast members having to guide them out like confused deer on a highway. Here's how to get a magic moment in Disneyland. Firstly, if you're helping strangers, calming kids, or just being decent and a cast member notices, it sometimes triggers a little Disney karma. There even used to be pixie dust pins for helpful guests, which is basically a medal for not being a menace. Next, if it's your real actual birthday, not your third one this year, wearing that birthday button might just earn you a sweet surprise. But if you're just going to fake it, you may get the unexpected surprise of getting nothing. Disney can smell birthday fraud, and they are very good at math. Lastly, and most importantly, according to people who got magic moments, it usually happens when they weren't trying to get one at all. Disney loves surprising people who aren't fishing for freebies like it's a hidden Mickey. Only Disney princesses are not allowed to do this. Firstly, princesses are not allowed to confirm that there are other versions of themselves, so they can't say things like, "There's another Elsa over there," even if Elsa number 2 is already waving 10 feet away. Next, princesses must stay in their universe, so Snow White can't say, "Welcome to Disneyland," like she's a tour guide. In fact, they can't say Disney, Disneyland, or Disney World at all. Also, if a cast member's shirt is unbuttoned, he can fix it on the spot. But if a princess wig is trying to escape, she can't fix it in public. Instead, she has to improvise in character and casually disappear off to a depressing faraway land known as the backstage. Lastly, unlike CMs, princesses don't wear name tags because they're always their character. Stupid things guests attempted at Disneyland that instantly backfired. Firstly, a man once tried to enter Disneyland for free by climbing onto the monorail track, which is basically the worst shortcut in theme park history. Unfortunately, the monorail did what monorails do, and that was the end of that. But sometimes one cautionary tale isn't enough, because in 1967, a guest jumped between people mover cars for fun and died. Then in 1980, someone tried the exact same thing and ended up with the exact same result. And other than jumping off, someone tried staying. One person tried hiding in Big Thunder Mountain in 2023 to stay in the park after closing, but Disney's overnight sweep caught him immediately. Lastly, one guest thought grabbing a park duck for a family moment was a good idea. It wasn't. The duck freaked out, other guests freaked out, and security kindly escorted them to the never come back exit. What if Disneyland gave every guest unlimited lightning lane? First of all, if everyone's on the lightning lane, then obviously it won't be so lightning anymore. It will eventually become just like another queue, and guests will start asking, "Is there a lightning lane for the lightning lane?" At some point, the good old standby line might even have shorter wait times. More importantly, because anyone can choose which time they ride, some guests will refuse to leave their seats after the ride is over, simply because they have already booked a lightning lane for the next run. But most importantly, even if you have unlimited lightning lane access, with dozens of book times on popular rides like Rise of Resistance, you still can't beat the final boss of Disneyland rides. Ladies and gentlemen, Rise of the Resistance is temporarily unavailable. These are the craziest things to ever happen inside Disneyland. Firstly, a guest genuinely believed Mickey Mouse controlled the weather and demanded staff stop the rain immediately. Sadly, Mickey's magic doesn't extend to climate control, though if anyone could, it'd be him. Next, someone planted a creepy protest doll inside It's a Small World, forcing a full ride shutdown, which raises one simple question. How did security miss that? More crazier, a man who claimed to know animals tried to wrangle a trolley horse on Main Street. It panicked and almost caused a scene. Luckily, a cast member was able to negotiate with the horse peacefully. Lastly, a group of yippies tried to take over Disneyland in 1970, expecting only Mickey Mouse and his band of mascots to stop them. Instead, they met the full force of the Anaheim police, resulting in 18 arrests and still no changes in ticket prices. Everything cast members aren't allowed to say under NDA. Firstly, getting a free Mickey bar feels like a random act of Disney magic, but most of the time, it actually isn't random at all. They have a script to follow, and you're just part of the show. Next, ever notice the music suddenly gets louder and faster near exits or bottlenecks? That's not your imagination. They often do this to push guest flow and make people move along, but they can't say they're using sounds to herd human guests like happy cattle. Speaking of guests, even if someone is being the worst human in flip-flops, cast members can't openly say it. Instead, they vent in private group chats or just smile until their soul escapes out the corner of their eye. And lastly, you may know the hidden part codes like Code V or Protein Spill, but there are many more that cast members won't explain. Secret codes work best when it's actually secret. What happens if you break something at Disneyland? If you break a souvenir like a mug or toy on accident, cast members usually replace it or ignore the damage because Disney values goodwill over drama. The same goes if your kid knocks something over. Most cast members are understanding since they know kids are basically tiny hurricanes with legs. However, if you damage something that belongs to the park, like themed crates or queue props, a cast member must report it to security or maintenance. There'll be a quiet investigation, and sometimes the incident is tagged to your profile. Still, you don't pay. But if you somehow damage an entire ride, like pressing a shiny red button you weren't supposed to, you can be billed or charged. If you personally make Space Mountain fall apart, expect a call, and maybe an invoice with a lot of zeros. Shocking things Disney princess saw guests do in Disneyland. Firstly, a Disneyland guest. I repeat, a guest once dressed up as Belle and started signing autographs and posing for photos as if she were an official character. This confused other guests, even some cast members, and probably the real Belle herself. Next, guests sometimes ask intense, complicated trivia questions, like what it feels like to have Elsa's powers, or asking for a live demonstration. Unfortunately, the only demonstration they got was how to perfectly deflect to another topic. There was also this one time when a woman brought a real preserved crab and proudly told Ariel, "He looks just like Sebastian." Now the fact that Ariel stayed in character while being introduced to an actual crab deserves its Character Integrity Award. Lastly, a woman handed Belle an entire turkey leg and said, "You look hungry." Although Belle stayed in character, the actress definitely made eye contact with that turkey. These are every level of a Disneyland trip. First, we have budget, where saving money becomes part of the attraction. You survive on free ice water and whatever snacks you smuggled in. You avoid Disney hotels and just drive back home instead. As for Lightning Lane, it exists, just not for you. Then we have mid-range. You start using Lightning Lane on big rides and allow yourself one merch item like a responsible adult. You even snag reserved viewing for fireworks instead of standing behind 7 iPhones. Next up is luxury. Now you're staying at a deluxe Disney hotel, and instead of queuing, Mickey comes to you during breakfast buffet. You get shorter waits with MultiPass and don't feel guilty buying 2 souvenirs. And finally, Mickey mode. You enter with a VIP tour guide in plaid, skip every line, lounge in Club 33, and dine at 21 Royal. From here on, the only line you'll see is on your credit card bill. Strangest things guests have tried to bring into Disneyland. Firstly, a guest once tried bringing an actual potty chair into Disneyland, as if their toddler was going to drop a royal decree mid-parade. In case you're about to do the same, Disneyland has baby care centers for all your baby care needs. Next, guests have tried bringing unicycles, tricycles, and even motorcycles, clearly believing they could casually stroll through Main Street. Better yet, alcohol smuggling has entered its creative era, because some guests even hide it in their shoes. And honestly, if Disneyland catches you doing that, the punishment should just be letting you continue, because that alone is quite a feat. And finally, someone attempted to bring a monkey by claiming that it was a service animal. Security had to disagree, mostly because the monkey disagreed too, by doing very monkey things. Things you'll never see inside Disneyland. Firstly, you'll never see a cast member casually using their phone in the park because the illusion would shatter faster than a dropped Mickey bar. If you spot one using a phone, you're either dreaming or in the wrong theme park entirely. Next, Disney's plainclothes security stays invisible on purpose, which is impressive considering they're everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But if you want to see them, a dad figure without a family near gift shops, yep, that's them. Also, there are many trash cans at the park, but I bet you'll never see one that's completely full. Disneyland trash cans are emptied so often it's almost creepy, thanks to trash cans placed every 30 feet. And lastly, you'll almost never see Disneyland completely empty. Even at opening, rope drop looks like someone tried to film Black Friday. These are the weirdest things guests have said to cast members in Disneyland. Firstly, a guest once confidently asked a cast member, "Where's the Hollywood Backlot Tour?" And in case you don't know what that is, neither does the CM. Turns out the attraction doesn't exist, and the CM had to explain this wasn't Universal Studios, even though the guest looked ready to queue anyway. Next, a little kid shot his shot with Minnie like she was his preschool crush, but the CM inside the costume had to let him down nicely, probably while Mickey glared from across the park. Speaking of Mickey, a child committed to science wanted to know how a giant mouse like him goes to the bathroom. Luckily, Mickey Mouse doesn't need to talk and his handler handled it. And lastly, even with a full costume, name tag, headset, and the aura of someone playing a happy person on stage, guests still ask CMs, "Do you work here?" The dumbest ways guests got kicked out of Disneyland. Firstly, someone tried to pass clearly older kids as under 2 to dodge tickets, not knowing it only works if security has never seen a child before. Next, a guest wanted to bring their pet in and pretended that it was a service dog. However, cast members caught on that the service can't do service and was just a dog, so they got kicked out of the park. Now, worse than getting kicked out of the park is getting kicked out of its most exclusive club. One couple was ejected from Club 33 so decisively they later sued Disneyland over it. Another member allegedly got drunk in public inside Club 33 and lost their membership entirely. Lastly, back when the Skyway existed, someone thought spitting on people below was the perfect place for a surprise rain experience. They got kicked out multiple times, proving commitment to a very dumb bit. No one tells you about these hidden rules in Disneyland. Firstly, if a kid loses a tooth in the park, cast members quietly follow a tooth fairy protocol and hand out keepsake containers with characters like Tinkerbell or Dale. Kids can even write a note from the tooth fairy and get a small surprise. Next, if you refund or cancel too many mobile food orders in one day, usually over 5, Disney will quietly flag your account, which means they know your accidental oops purchase might not actually be oops at all. Also, if this isn't obvious, showing up late to your lightning lane sends you to standby. This has always been the rule, which is why some guests act like it was invented 5 seconds ago just for them. Lastly, Disney doesn't actually ban gum. They just don't sell it because guests have a long history of sticking it everywhere. But if you really need it, you're allowed to bring your own. These are every type of family visiting Disneyland. First, we have the Shirt Force 1. They wear custom shirts, color-coded hats, and slogans that explain their family motto and where they're from. Everyone moves together because mom planned this 6 months ago. Then we have the line multipliers. These are the families where you only see 2 people enter the line, then suddenly a small army of 10 more appear later like it's a magic trick. Next are the park nappers. They schedule more naps than rides, and you mostly don't see them at the park. They're back at their Disney-themed hotel, napping. There's also the Disney Adults family. They're all over 18 and Disney runs in their blood. Though not literally. They do emotional speeches in Fantasyland and they weep during Happily Ever After. They also probably know every cast member who's ever worked at the park. The worst types of guests you'll see at Disneyland. Firstly, we have the heavy backpackers. They think Disneyland is a backpacking hike, carrying a bag the size of a week-long trek. And every time they turn around, it becomes a surprise boulder to whoever was nearby. Then there's the stroller bulldozer, piloting a wheeled battering ram with total faith that physics and the people nearby will eventually yield out of the way. More often than not, the stroller carries no babies and is usually just used as a mobile storage unit. You also have the typical entitled royal guest. They arrive in the park with a mental contract that the day must be perfect and acting scandalized when life refuses to behave like an Instagram ad. Lastly, we have the HEPA sprinklers. They scatter their loved ones' ashes inside the park like it's pixie dust and instantly convert a magical moment into a hazmat situation. Craziest things cast members saw happen in Disneyland. Firstly, cast members have seen parents breastfeeding noticeably older kids in ride lines, often in positions that made nearby guests suddenly discover the ceiling is very interesting. Next, some guests sincerely believe Disney controls the weather with a giant dome, and they ask cast members to turn it on when it's too hot or raining. CMs have to explain with a straight face that the dome is, unfortunately, imaginary. Now weirder than that, a guest reportedly got pooped on by a duck and then threw it back in retaliation. The guest got unfortunately escorted out, but surprisingly, the duck got to stay. Lastly, someone once proposed near the castle. However, it ended with a very loud no, and the person sprinted down Main Street, leaving the proposer behind. It was the most magical walk of shame ever recorded. The different stages of a Disneyland ride. You start with the classic, thinking, this line doesn't look bad, before realizing it loops behind multiple buildings and a gift shop. but you still join because the sign says 35 minutes and ignore the fact the line hasn't moved since Nixon was in office. After a while, you start overanalyzing every prop like a Disney historian, convinced even a random crack on the wall is part of the story. And every time you think you're boarding with the next room, it's actually just more lines. Eventually, you sit down and the ride begins. As always, someone behind you will be loudly revoicing every character, and someone next to you has a phone flash bright enough to signal aircraft. Finally, the ride ends, and it spits you out into a gift shop. As you exit, you immediately spot another ride and think, that line doesn't look that bad. Every type of guest Disneyland wasn't built for. First, we have the human parking cone. These are guests who stop exactly where crowds need to move. They stop right in the middle of a ride queue, as well as mid-walkway of Main Street so they can take it all in. Next, we have the unofficial ride narrator, and as the name suggests, they explain every scene with confidence, acting like a guided tour nobody asked for. We also have the "My group is up there" skipper. They casually rewrite the laws of lines with a hand gesture and confidence. Apparently, fairness dissolves the moment someone you know exists somewhere ahead. Do they actually know someone up front? No. Then there are the theme park curators, providing unsolicited commentary on algae levels, paint wear, and water clarity. They observe attractions the way museum critics inspect brushstrokes, while actively riding a boat shaped like a frog. Disneyland characters you'll almost never see around the park. Firstly, we have Hortensia, Oswald's girlfriend. Most guests and their kids nowadays have absolutely no idea who she is. She only appears during special events like Lunar New Year, making her more of a cameo than a park regular. Next, we have the Sheriff of Nottingham. He's a classic villain who mostly never appears nowadays. But that's mainly because he looks like this. Not exactly the most huggable character. We also have Scrooge McDuck. Despite being rich enough to buy the park, Scrooge barely shows up at Disneyland. He's mostly reserved for special holidays or fan events. Or maybe you've met him and you just thought he's Donald. Lastly is Tarzan. And why'd he disappear? Well, mostly because of this. Yep, guests turned his meet and greets into a live thirst trap. Too many women were screaming, flirting, and their husbands weren't exactly happy with it. Every Disney cast member rules that are more intense than you think. Firstly, being a cast member doesn't mean you can wander backstage like it's your house. You're not allowed backstage unless you're actively working in that specific park that day. On your day off, you're just another guest who also happens to know too much. Next, you may have heard of Code V and HEPA cleanup, but there's also Code BBP, which stands for blood cleanup. And unlike vomit, blood spill usually means something actually happened. On top of that, cast members are trained to speak the tone of the land they're in. If you're in a Polynesian-themed area, you're saying aloha. And in Galaxy's Edge, you greet people like you've never heard of Earth. And lastly, if something turns into a big issue, Disney often sides with the guest, even when the guest is very wrong. This helps keep the magic, but quietly breaks a few cast member souls. Things everyone does at Disneyland but won't admit. Everyone has pretended they knew a hidden shortcut at Disneyland, confidently leading their group down a mysterious path like a seasoned local. 5 minutes later, they're standing behind an unknown backstage door wondering how leadership slipped away so fast. Sometimes you drift into a queue just because it looks cool and themed, assuming a ride must be at the end of it. 20 minutes later, you realize it's actually a line for a restaurant, meet and greet, or a limited edition popcorn. During rides, at some point, you might be too caught up in the moment you start narrating the ride out loud. No one asked, but now everyone knows what's supposed to happen next. Lastly, some people practice their ride photo face deep in the queue so they'd be ready when it snaps. But when the ride starts and the camera flashes, their face defaults to a shocked passport photo. Disneyland attractions you should never ride. Firstly, we have Finding Nemo's Submarine Voyage. The lagoon is beautiful, but once you're sealed inside the submarine, it feels like watching an aquarium screensaver in traffic. But hey, if you've ever wanted to feel trapped in a yellow submarine with no beetles, let it be. Next is Autopia, the classic 1955 ride where you wait forever to drive slowly while inhaling exhaust fumes. Nowadays, this attraction runs on nostalgia, because otherwise, why wait in line to drive 5 miles per hour behind a 6-year-old who discovered braking? Then we have Goofy's Sky School. This ride feels like a shopping cart with commitment issues being pushed down a mountain. Many guests describe it as being tossed around in a metal box. Lastly, there's It's a Small World. Everyone should ride it once, but that's enough because the song never leaves your head. Doing it again feels like renewing a subscription you didn't want. Here's what no one tells you about working at Disneyland. Firstly, injuries and accidents occur on a daily basis, yet you've likely never heard a thing about them. They also rarely reach the mainstream news. Next, some cast members see wild things backstage, like performers sitting around in half-finished makeup or full costume while casually scrolling their phones. It's like catching Santa at Target in sweatpants. Speaking of backstage, Disneyland doesn't have the famous utilidor tunnels at Disney World, but it does have hidden hallways and doors all over the park. You mostly walk past these random access points without realizing you're one door away from seeing a headless Mickey. And speaking of Mickey, he might be short, tall, or walking a little funny. This is because the person inside Mickey or Goofy changes depending on height, shift, and heat tolerance. One day he's 5'2", the next day he's basketball material. Every Disneyland secret the mouse can't tell you. Firstly, Disney quietly tracks which trash cans fill up the fastest and then redesigns walkways around that data, because trash never lies. Next, when a ride breaks down, they sometimes hold it down a little longer on purpose, not because anything is wrong, but because the park wants crowds to spread out first. Speaking of rides, Disney also knows which direction you'll turn when exiting a ride, because exits are tested over and over to catch your strongest eyeball first. That's why the gift shop always feels unavoidable. And lastly, the background music subtly changes based on how crowded an area is, with faster tempos pushing you along and slower ones encouraging you to linger. You'd think you're moving naturally, but your legs are basically responding to the tempo. Disneyland secrets that you're not meant to know. First, backstage areas are way closer than you realize, with plain doors hiding costuming rooms, break areas, and equipment just feet away. You walk past them constantly, assuming they lead to nothing, which is exactly the point. Next, some ride scenes still physically exist, but are permanently turned off, a state known as B mode. They're maintained forever, just in case something in the ride breaks, and they're needed as a replacement scene. Speaking of rides, many rides use hidden laser sensors to detect if a guest stands up or moves where they shouldn't. If that laser detects motion, the ride shuts down instantly, which is why guest behavior is one of the top causes of ride breakdowns, even though nothing actually broke. What if you spent 1 year in Disneyland? Day 1, you arrive at the park and the churro smell hits you like a warm hug. You smile, take a deep breath, and accept your diet ends today. After a month, you realize Disneyland is a gym disguised as happiness. You've walked 40,000 steps a day, and you'd have a six-pack by now if you didn't eat 2 turkey legs a day. Month 3, you notice the illusion. The castle isn't tall, the mountains are fake, the second floors aren't real. You're almost about to be disturbed. Then Phantasmic starts and you forget everything. Month 6, you've ridden Haunted Mansion 100 times and have a favorite ghost. You also gained the ability to sense when Rise of the Resistance is about to break down. Month 12, you know the park completely. Every cast member recognizes you. At this point, you're basically clocking in with them. You just don't get paid. After 1 year, it's time to leave. But Mickey stops you with a long receipt the length of Main Street. Oh, you thought you were living there for free. Rare Disneyland souvenirs that are now worth thousands. Firstly, old Disneyland maps are basically paper time machines showing the park before major rides existed. One rare edition sold for $2,100, which is wild for something given away free. Next, before digital tickets, guests used booklets with A to E ride coupons, and a full unused 1956 adult book was sold for $7,800, proving not riding your rides might have been the smartest move. Now, if you were more ambitious with taking Disney property, an original opening year Space Mountain ride vehicle sold for $42,500, and somehow nobody noticed a spaceship ride leaving the gates. As for the holy grail of all, the original 1950s Disneyland investor prospectus map, the blueprint that convinced people this crazy idea would work. It was sold for $700,000. What happens if you get arrested inside Disneyland? First of all, Disney can't officially arrest anyone. They can only detain you inside the park until real police arrive. Now, just to put this into perspective, Disney is extremely protective of its image. They don't want squad cars on Main Street, so most situations are handled backstage to an area better known to fans as Disney Jail. And despite the nickname, it's not some themed holding cell, just a basic office chair and no fast pass out of it. Once the police arrive and the cuffs go on, your magical Disney day is completely over. All your tickets, reservations, and lightning lanes will become useless, and absolutely no refunds will be given, no matter how expensive the day was supposed to be. But here's the bigger issue. Disney may issue a formal trespass warning, or worse, a full ban. And that doesn't just cover Disneyland. It can extend to California Adventure, Downtown Disney, Disney World, and even the hotels. So make one mistake inside the park, and the entire kingdom is off limits. Disney World is way bigger than it needs to be. Look at this map. Disney World is 47 square miles of theme park magic, compared to Disneyland's 0.78 square miles, basically a parking lot. You could fit 51 Disneyland resorts inside Disney World and still have room for an airport. But you see, almost none of that land is a theme park. Most of it is swamps, lakes, backstage warehouses, and miles of roads. After Walt Disney saw cheap motels and neon signs pop up around Disneyland, he knew he lost control of the illusion. Guests could see the real world right outside the castle. So in Florida, Walt made sure the next park would never be surrounded again. He bought 47 square miles, not to build more rides, but to keep the real world miles away, so magic never has to compete with reality. What happens if you pretend to be a cast member? The second you look like staff, guests will start asking you where everything is. Bathroom locations, rides, lost strollers, and what time the 6 p.m. parade starts. Now, if you say something wrong or you don't know the answers, they might start squinting at your name tag and say, "Wait, you don't work here, do you?" Die-hard Disney fans will instantly clock you as a fake from a mile away. They notice details you can't fake, like improper hairstyle, no radio, pointing with one finger, or calling yourself an employee instead of a cast member. Once security steps in and verifies you don't actually work there, you'll be escorted out of the park with a potential lifetime ban, officially having performed the shortest shift in Disney history. What happens if you throw up on a ride at Disneyland? Firstly, the attraction will pause for a few minutes while custodial staff enters the crime scene and clean up the mess. They usually don't say, "Someone just threw up" over the radio. They use codes like Code V or protein spill so it sounds calm. If you protein spilled on a ride vehicle, that specific car gets removed from service and sent backstage to be deep cleaned. But if you throw up halfway through the ride, like a human sprinkler, splashing onto props and the people behind you, your remains can leave a trail that forces a much longer closure. You'll be guided to first aid, where they can help you cool down and recover. However, the person you accidentally hit in the splash zone, they might get compensated with a free shirt and a traumatic memory that lasts forever. What happens if you drop something on a Disneyland ride? If your item falls into the ride path or becomes a safety hazard, the entire ride stops. They'll power it down, turn the lights on, and evacuate everyone just so they can retrieve the thing you swore you had a good grip on. But if not, they won't grab it right away. They wait until the park closes and do a scheduled retrieval later. Some guests have had their phones or magic bands mailed back days or even weeks later, long after they forgot they ever owned them. But worse, there are the items that are simply gone. One time, a guest watched their flip-flop fall into a water channel and vanish. No one ever found it, except maybe Ariel, who's now smiling because it made her collection complete. What happens if you refuse to leave Disneyland? First, you're gently herded by a growing line of cast members who keep helpfully pointing you only one direction: out. Once you drift forward toward the front, they won't let you turn around to wander deeper again. Main Street becomes the unofficial final stop where shops stay open a little later even after all the lands have closed. As the park gets emptier, you'll become the reason cast members can't clock out, and they'll absolutely let you feel it. But you also didn't come this far to leave on your own 2 feet, so you ran away. But you see, because Disney has cameras everywhere, they'll always know where you are. So eventually you'll get caught in about 2 minutes or so, bringing an end to the shortest after-hours event in Disneyland history with a potential ban as your souvenir.